The silent theatre of the mind. In the silent theatre of the mind, a story is always playing, a relentless, looping drama of fears, desires, memories, and imagined futures. The mind, an ever-eager director, insists on controlling every scene, every character, every outcome. It tries to force the plot to its preferred conclusion, believing that only through this meticulous control can it find safety and peace. But what happens when the script veers off course? When the actors forget their lines, or the stage itself crumbles? We are left not with peace, but with a profound and often painful struggle. The mind's need to control is not a source of power, but a deep attachment to a story that may never be. What if the peace you are searching for is not found by adding anything? Not a new technique, not another ambition, not a different outcome, but by the gentle act of letting go. What if true control is not about gripping the reins of life, but about realizing that you were never the one holding them in the first place? This is not a surrender to apathy, but a surrender to a deeper wisdom, a knowing that lies beneath the noise of the mind's perpetual striving. This journey is about finding the ancient stillness that lives within you, a space of profound calm that exists regardless of the drama unfolding on the stage. It's a journey from the anxious director to the peaceful audience, from the relentless grip to the open hand. It is a path that requires no effort, only permission. So, find your comfortable space, whether you are sitting or lying down. Let the outer world fade and allow the gentle rhythm of your own breath to become your anchor. Close your eyes and allow this journey to begin. The story of the unmovable tree. A long time ago, a young Stoic student came to his master, tormented by the events of the world around him. "Master," he said, "how can I find peace when the actions of others cause me so much suffering? How can I control the storms that rage in my village, the injustices of the marketplace, and the unkind words of my neighbors?" The master simply led the student to a magnificent oak tree that stood on a hill. Its roots plunged deep into the earth. "Look at this tree," the master said. "The wind can howl, bending its branches violently. The rain can lash against its leaves, and the cold can freeze its trunk. Yet, the tree remains. It does not try to command the wind to cease, nor does it curse the rain. It simply stands, yielding its branches when necessary but holding its trunk firm. It knows what is its own and what is not." The master then pointed to the student's own feet. "Your mind, your thoughts, your intentions, these are the roots of your tree. The wind and rain are the external events. You cannot control the storm, but you can control how you stand within it." This ancient story is a perfect illustration of the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control. The mind, in its well-intentioned but misguided effort to protect us, often spends its energy trying to control the uncontrollable. It frets over the future, replays the past, and worries about the opinions of others. These are all external winds and rains. We waste vast amounts of energy trying to bend the world to our will, only to be left exhausted and frustrated when it refuses. The core teaching here is simple. There are things within your power and things outside of it. The wind and the rain, the actions of others, the unpredictable course of events, the outcome of a project are outside your control. Your thoughts, your reactions, your judgments, and your efforts are within it. Think about a modern application of this. A colleague sends you a sharp, critical email. The immediate, untrained mind wants to control the situation by sending an equally sharp reply, proving them wrong, or dwelling on their perceived injustice. The ancient wisdom would ask you to pause. The email itself, the words of your colleague, their judgment, this is the wind. You cannot control it. But your reaction to it, your choice to take a deep breath before responding, your decision to view it as a piece of information rather than a personal attack, that is the tree's firm trunk. This is the only place true freedom and peace can be found, in the quiet, inner sanctuary of your own mind. By focusing your energy solely on what you can control, you stop being a leaf at the mercy of the wind and become the tree itself, unmovable, grounded, and at peace. The burden of the two arrows. The Buddha once told a story about a person struck by an arrow. When the first arrow hits, it causes immediate physical pain. This pain is an unavoidable part of life. We all experience it. But, the Buddha explained, the untrained mind then proceeds to shoot a second arrow. This second arrow is not physical. It is the mental and emotional suffering that follows the initial pain. It is the anger, the self-pity, the dwelling on the injustice of it all, the fear that it might happen again. The pain of the first arrow is inevitable, but the pain of the second arrow is entirely self-inflicted. This is a foundational Buddhist teaching on the nature of suffering. So much of our desire to control comes from a desperate attempt to avoid the first arrow, to prevent all pain from ever touching us. But this is an impossible task. We will all be struck by the arrows of illness, loss, disappointment, and unforeseen challenges. The real power, the true freedom, lies not in dodging the first arrow, but in refusing to shoot the second. The first arrow might be a difficult diagnosis, the end of a relationship, or a financial setback. These are facts of life. The second arrow is the story we tell ourselves about those facts. This is so unfair. I am a failure. I will never be happy again. Let's apply this to a modern situation. Imagine you are working on a creative project and it is rejected. The rejection itself is the first arrow, a moment of disappointment, a setback, a piece of objective feedback. This is the pain of the first arrow. It is a natural, healthy response to feel a sense of loss. But the ego, in its need to control the narrative and protect its identity, often immediately shoots the second arrow. This second arrow is the voice that says, "I'm not good enough. My work is worthless. I should just give up." This is the internal suffering, the needless and cyclical pain that makes the initial disappointment unbearable. The art of letting go, in this context, is the conscious decision to drop the second arrow. It is the practice of recognizing that the thought, "I am a failure," is a choice, not a fact. It's about feeling the initial sting of rejection without adding the poison of self-judgment. You can acknowledge the pain of the first arrow and then, with a profound sense of grace and self-compassion, simply let it be. This doesn't mean you don't take action or learn from the experience. On the contrary, by not being immobilized by the second arrow, you are free to act with a clear mind, to learn, to adapt, and to move forward without the heavy burden of unnecessary suffering. The shadow in the mirror, in the quiet hours of a dark night, a spiritual seeker meditated, striving for enlightenment. He believed that to achieve peace, He must only focus on his highest, most virtuous self. He polished the parts of him that were kind and compassionate and tried to ignore all the rest. One night, a figure appeared in his meditation, a dark, grotesque shape with a familiar face. It was angry, jealous, and full of pain. The seeker recoiled in horror and tried to push the figure away, but the more he resisted, the more it grew, filling the room with its terrible presence. He fled his meditation in fear. Later, the wise master of the monastery simply said, "The shadow you ran from was not a demon. It was you, asking to be seen. You cannot become whole by cutting yourself in half." This timeless parable introduces the psychological concept of the shadow self. The shadow represents the parts of our personality that we have rejected, suppressed, or disowned. It is the repository of our perceived flaws, our hidden weaknesses, our unprocessed traumas, and all the qualities we deem unacceptable in ourselves. The mind, in its desire for a perfect, controlled identity, shoves these elements into the darkness, hoping they will disappear, but they never do. Instead, they operate from the shadows, dictating our behavior in ways we don't understand. Our deep-seated need for control, for example, often stems from a hidden fear of being found lacking, or a repressed anger from a past injustice. We try to control the external world to avoid confronting the uncomfortable truths within. The modern application of this is everywhere. You may find yourself becoming disproportionately angry at a colleague's success, only to realize the emotion is rooted in your own unacknowledged envy. You might compulsively seek validation on social media, driven by a deep-seated fear of worthlessness that you refuse to look at. This is the shadow at work. The process of shadow work is not about destroying this part of you. It's about acknowledging its existence. It's about turning toward the figure in the dark, not with fear, but with curiosity and a gentle acceptance. It's about saying, "Yes, this is also a part of me." When you stop fighting your shadow, it loses its power to control you from behind the scenes. You stop needing to control the external world to manage an internal, unacknowledged wound. You can let go of the desperate grip because you are no longer a fragmented being, but a whole one. You can integrate your darkness with your light, finally finding peace in the full spectrum of who you are. The river of impermanence. A young monk once meditated beside a flowing river, trying to grasp the essence of impermanence. He observed the water rushing past him, a constant, beautiful current. He noticed a single leaf fall from a tree and float gracefully down the stream. "How beautiful," he thought. "I wish I could hold on to this moment forever." He ran downstream to a shallow bend and reached out to grab the leaf. But just as his fingers touched it, the current pulled it away. He tried again with another leaf and another, but each time the river would not allow him to hold on. Frustrated, he returned to his original spot. He saw a wise old monk sitting calmly, simply watching the water. "Master," the young monk said, "I cannot grasp the river. It will not let me keep anything." The old monk smiled. "You are trying to possess the river," he replied. "The river is not a possession. It is a process. The same water never passes you twice, and that is its beauty. To love the river is to love the letting go." This simple tale reveals the core Buddhist concept of anicca, or impermanence. Everything in existence, every thought, every feeling, every relationship, every physical object, is in a constant state of flux. Nothing lasts. Our minds, however, have a deep-seated tendency to resist this fundamental truth. We crave permanence. We want to freeze happy moments, cling to comfortable situations, and believe that the present state of things will endure. This clinging is the root of so much suffering. When we resist the flow of change, we are like the young monk trying to hold onto a leaf in a rushing river. We are fighting the very nature of reality. The pain is not caused by the change itself, but by our attachment to what was. In modern life, we see this played out in a million different ways. The anxiety about a job ending, the grief over a loved one's passing, the fear of growing old, all are a result of our resistance to impermanence. We look at an old photograph and feel a pang of sadness, not because the moment was bad, but because we are mourning its passing. A modern application of this wisdom is to practice acknowledging impermanence in small, daily ways. Notice how a beautiful sunset fades. Recognize that the feeling of happiness you have right now is temporary, and so is the feeling of sadness. You can love the sunset without trying to capture it forever. You can appreciate the feeling of happiness without a frantic need for it to last. By releasing the need to control or possess each moment, you stop fighting the current and begin to flow with it. This doesn't mean you don't appreciate or cherish things. It means you cherish them fully in the moment, precisely because you know they are beautiful and fleeting. Like a leaf on the river, the empty cup of the scholar, a brilliant professor, well versed in the teachings of Zen, traveled a great distance to visit a renowned master. Upon his arrival, he began to lecture the master on his own knowledge, speaking at length about the intricacies of the Dharma and the nature of enlightenment. The master listened patiently, but as the professor spoke, he began to pour tea for them. He filled the professor's cup to the brim, and then, without stopping, he continued to pour until the tea was spilling over the sides, running onto the table, and dripping onto the professor's robes. Startled, the professor jumped up. "Master, stop. The cup is full. No more tea can fit in." The master simply stopped pouring, looked at the professor, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I possibly show you anything new unless you first empty your cup?" This classic Zen story is a potent teaching on the necessity of a beginner's mind, or shoshin. The mind, in its desire for control and certainty, builds a fortress of pre-existing knowledge, beliefs, and assumptions. It becomes so convinced it knows the answers that it closes itself off to new possibilities and truths. The ego loves to be right, and this need to be right is a form of control, a refusal to be vulnerable to uncertainty. But true wisdom is not about accumulating more information. It's about making space for a deeper, more intuitive understanding to arise. The full cup cannot receive. The modern application of this is deeply relevant to our information-saturated lives. We are constantly consuming content, forming opinions, and taking sides, all in an effort to feel knowledgeable and in control. We cling to our political views, our identities, and our past experiences as if they are unchangeable facts. But what if you were to approach a disagreement with an empty cup? What if you truly listen to someone else's perspective, not with the intention of formulating a rebuttal, but with a genuine desire to understand? This doesn't mean you have to abandon your values, but it means you release the need to be the one who is right. Practicing a beginner's mind is a powerful form of letting go. It is the conscious choice to approach each moment, each conversation, each new experience with a sense of humility and openness. It is the acknowledgement that you don't have all the answers, and that the most profound insights often come when you are willing to admit you don't know. By emptying the cup of your own preconceived notions, you create the space for life to pour in, unfiltered and new. You move from the rigid control of an expert to the boundless curiosity of a student. And in that vulnerability, you find a profound and unburdened freedom. The inner child's unspoken fear. There is a story that every human carries within them, a silent narrative written in the language of a younger self. This is the story of the inner child. A long time ago, in a garden of innocence, a child learned that certain things were safe and others were not. Perhaps they learned that showing vulnerability led to hurt, or that expressing a certain emotion was met with disapproval. To cope, this child built a fortress around its heart, creating rules and systems of control to ensure it would never feel that pain again. Years passed, and the child grew into an adult, but the fortress remained. The adult mind, with all its logic and sophistication, inherited the blueprints of control from this wounded inner child. This is a central concept in modern psychology. The desire for control is often a learned defense mechanism stemming from unprocessed childhood trauma or fear. That incessant need to manage every detail of a project, the anxiety when a plan changes, the overreaction to a small critique. These are not always logical responses to the present moment. They are often echoes of a younger self, still trying to protect itself from a world it perceived as unpredictable and unsafe. The adult is trying to prevent a past hurt from reoccurring in the present. The control is a desperate attempt to find a sense of safety that was once missing. The powerful thing about this understanding is that it shifts the perspective from "I am a controlling person" to "I am a person whose inner child is still scared." This isn't about blaming the past. It's about acknowledging it so you can finally let it go. Think about a modern application. You become intensely anxious about a job interview, replaying every possible scenario in your mind. The conscious mind might say, "I am just being prepared." But if you were to look deeper, you might hear the whisper of your inner child, the part of you that once felt utterly powerless and wants to control the outcome to avoid the shame of failure. The practice of letting go, in this context, begins with a simple act of compassionate listening. It's about turning inward and asking that younger part of you, what are you afraid of? What do you need? You don't have to fix the past, but you can give that younger self the love, validation, and safety it needs right now. By doing so, you can slowly dismantle the old fortress of control. You can show that younger part of you that the world is no longer the same garden of uncertainty, and that you, as the adult, are finally strong enough to let go of the tight grip and trust in the present moment. This isn't a magical cure, but a gentle, ongoing process of healing that allows you to release the fears that no longer serve you. The monk's stone and the empty boat. There is a timeless Zen story of a traveling monk who carried a beautiful, smooth stone in his bag. He had found it on a riverbank years ago and believed it brought him good fortune. He would often take it out, admire its perfect shape, and hold it tightly in his palm, convinced that as long as he had the stone, he was safe. One day, while crossing a deep river on a rickety bridge, the bridge began to sway violently. Fear gripped him, and in his panic, he clutched the stone even tighter. His grip was so strong, so absolute, that his hand began to cramp. The pain and the fear of losing the stone, combined with the instability of the bridge, made it impossible for him to focus. He almost lost his balance. It was only when he consciously opened his palm and allowed the stone to drop into the river below that a profound calm washed over him. The weight was gone, his hand was free, and he found the stability he needed to cross safely. This story teaches us about non-attachment. The monk's fear was not of the bridge, but of losing the stone. The very thing he believed was protecting him was actually what threatened him. We often carry 1,000 such stones in our minds: old grudges, expectations of others, our need to be right, or our cherished self-image. We hold on to them so tightly, believing they define us or keep us safe, but they only weigh us down and make us unstable when life's bridges begin to shake. The letting go of the stone is not a loss, it is a liberation. Another famous Zen parable speaks of a person rowing a boat across a lake. Suddenly, a second boat crashes into theirs. The person, filled with rage, stands up to yell at the other boatman. But when they look, they realize the second boat is empty. There is no one to be angry at. Their rage dissolves instantly. This story is an illustration of non-reaction. In modern life, we are constantly being hit by empty boats. The driver who cuts you off, the email that feels rude, the person who doesn't text you back. We immediately react as if there is a malicious captain at the helm, a conscious intent to hurt us. We expend vast amounts of emotional energy on what are often just impersonal, empty events. The modern application of these two parables is the practice of consciously choosing our focus. When you feel a wave of anxiety, ask yourself, what stone am I holding on to? Is it the outcome of a meeting? Is it the need for a certain person's approval? Acknowledge it. And then, in a moment of internal stillness, practice the mental act of opening your palm and letting it drop. It will be scary at first, as if you are losing a part of yourself. But in that act of release, you will find a new sense of freedom. Similarly, when you feel the pang of anger or frustration, pause and ask, is this an empty boat? Is there a malicious intent? Or is this just an impersonal event? By doing so, you can choose not to shoot the second arrow, not to react. This dual practice of letting go of your inner stones and recognizing the empty boats of the world is a powerful pathway to an unburdened and truly peaceful existence. The ego's house of cards, the ego, in its most basic form, is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. It is the collection of our past successes and failures, our cherished beliefs, our roles, and our carefully constructed image. It is the captain of our ship, striving to navigate life's turbulent waters. But what if the ship itself is not a sturdy vessel, but a house of cards built on a foundation of shifting sand? The ego's greatest fear is not failure, but dissolution, the terrifying possibility that the entire structure might collapse. This fear is the primary engine behind the relentless need for control, The ego believes that if it can just manage every single variable, every thought, every person's opinion, every potential outcome, then the house will remain standing. It seeks validation, praise, and recognition, not out of a simple desire for happiness, but as a desperate attempt to shore up its fragile walls. It clings to its identity as the smart one, the successful one, or the good person, and views any challenge to this identity as an existential threat. When someone criticizes your work, the ego hears, "Your house is not as strong as you think." When a relationship ends, the ego feels the floorboards giving way. This is why letting go feels so terrifying. It feels like an act of self-destruction. Think about a modern application. You pour your energy into creating the perfect social media persona, a curated feed of triumphs and happiness. This is the ego meticulously building its house of cards. The goal is to project an image that feels safe, stable, and worthy of admiration. But what happens when a post receives fewer likes than expected, or when someone leaves a negative comment? The emotional reaction is often disproportionate because it's not about the post. It's about the fear of the house collapsing. The mind interprets the lack of external validation as a sign that its carefully constructed identity is not real. The desire to control the narrative, to delete the comment, to seek more likes, to post something even better, is the ego frantically trying to tape the cards back together. The art of letting go is the slow, courageous process of realizing that you are not the house of cards. You are the empty space in the room where the house stands. You are the awareness that witnesses the ego's frantic activity without participating in it. When you begin to detach from the ego's need for external validation, the cards can fall, and you will discover something profound, that you are still there. The peace you seek is not in the house, but in the spacious, quiet awareness that exists long after the structure has crumbled. It is in this stillness that you find your true, unbreakable self, finally free from the burden of perpetual control. The gardener and the uninvited weeds. There once was a wise gardener who tended to a magnificent garden. He carefully sowed seeds of beautiful flowers, nurtured his vegetables, and kept the soil rich. But no matter how diligently he worked, weeds would always appear. In his younger years, he would become furious at the sight of them, pulling them out with a vengeance, cursing their very existence. He spent so much of his time and energy fighting the weeds that he often neglected his flowers, which would sometimes wither from his lack of attention. One day, an old friend came to visit and saw the gardener in a fit of rage over a patch of weeds. The friend asked, "Why do you fight them so? They are simply a part of the garden's life, a wildness that cannot be tamed by force." The gardener replied, "They steal the nutrients and space from my flowers. They are a blight." The friend smiled gently and said, "True, they are not what you planted, but you cannot control their arrival. You can only control where you focus your energy. If you spend your life fighting weeds, you will always be a warrior. If you spend your life nurturing your flowers, you will be a gardener." From that day on, the wise gardener learned to accept the presence of the weeds. He would pull them out when they threatened his plants, but he no longer hated them. He accepted them as a part of the natural cycle, and he focused the majority of his time and love on his flowers. and his garden flourished as never before. This story is a powerful Stoic metaphor for the human mind. The garden is your mind, and the flowers are the thoughts, intentions, and actions you want to cultivate, your peace, your kindness, your purpose. The weeds are the uninvited thoughts and external events that appear without your permission. The anxious worries, the critical self-talk, the difficult people, and the moments of misfortune. In our desperation to maintain a perfect inner landscape, we often become like the young gardener, spending all our energy in a futile war against the weeds. We try to suppress unwanted feelings, control the behavior of others, and eliminate all sources of stress, only to find ourselves exhausted and our true inner garden neglected. The modern application of this is to shift your focus from controlling what you cannot to nurturing what you can. You cannot stop an intrusive, anxious thought from popping into your mind any more than the gardener can prevent a weed seed from landing in his soil. But you can choose not to water that weed with your attention. You can choose to notice it without judgment and then deliberately shift your focus back to the flowers, the present moment, a calming breath, a kind word to yourself. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about reallocating your most precious resource, your attention. By accepting the presence of the weeds as a natural part of the human experience and focusing your energy on cultivating your inner peace, you become the wise gardener, and your mind, your garden, can finally flourish. The sunyata of the self. A Zen master once spoke of a potter who crafts a beautiful clay pot. The potter shapes the clay, fires it, and paints it with intricate designs. But the master asked, "Where is the essence of the pot? Is it in the clay? Is it in the shape? Is it in the color?" The students were confused. "No," the master said. "The essence of the pot, its very function, is not in the material or the form. Its essence is the emptiness it contains. Without the emptiness, it is not a pot. It is just a lump of clay. And the pot is only possible because the clay is not inherently a pot. It can become a pot, but it can also become 1,000 other things." This is a profound teaching on the Buddhist concept of shunyata, pronounced shunyata, often translated as emptiness. But this is not a nihilistic emptiness, a void of nothingness. It is the emptiness of a fixed, independent existence. It means that nothing, including you, possesses a permanent, unchangeable self. The pot is empty of being a pot in and of itself, as it is completely dependent on the clay, the potter, the fire, and the space it occupies. In the same way, the self you perceive is empty of any permanent, independent essence. It is a constantly shifting collection of thoughts, feelings, relationships, and experiences, all interconnected and interdependent. The modern mind, driven by the ego's house of cards, finds this concept terrifying. It desperately wants a solid, unchanging I to hold on to. It wants to believe in a fixed identity as the smart one, the victim, or the leader. This clinging to a fixed self is the ultimate act of control, a desperate attempt to solidify something that is inherently fluid. But this clinging is also the source of immense suffering. When you are praised, the ego puffs up. When you are criticized, the ego shrivels in pain. The suffering comes from believing that this temporary, empty self is who you truly are. The art of letting go. In the context of shunyata, is the liberation from this mistaken identity. It is the realization that your true nature is not a fixed identity, but the vast, open space in which all these thoughts, feelings, and roles arise and pass away, much like the empty space within the pot. This doesn't mean you don't exist. It means you exist in a state of interconnectedness and potentiality. This understanding allows you to release the need to constantly defend or prove yourself. You can experience a moment of sadness without believing that I am a sad person. You can experience success without becoming attached to I am a successful person. You are no longer defined by these temporary conditions. You are the space. You can let go of the fixed narrative because you realize there was nothing to lose in the first place. You are the emptiness that makes the pot possible, the labyrinth of past hurts. There is a powerful psychological metaphor for how past traumas and unhealed wounds create a labyrinth within the mind. In this labyrinth, the past is not a linear memory, but a physical space we are trapped in, walking the same confusing paths over and over again. The ghosts of past hurts, a critical parent, a painful rejection, a feeling of betrayal, haunt the corners of this maze. Our mind, in a desperate attempt to find an exit, tries to control the future to avoid entering a familiar, painful corridor again. It creates elaborate rules. If I am always perfect, I won't be criticized. If I never trust anyone, I won't be hurt. These rules are meant to be a map, but they only serve to make the labyrinth more complex, keeping us walking in circles. The need for control becomes the invisible walls of the maze itself. This deep-seated need for control is often a learned response to feeling utterly powerless. When something painful happens to us as a child or a young adult, and we have no way to process it or change the outcome, the mind's only recourse is to promise itself, this will never happen again. That promise becomes a vow to control the world. The unhealed inner child is the one still walking the corridors of that labyrinth, and the adult mind is the one frantically building new walls, believing that by doing so, it can finally reach the exit. But the exit is not at the end of the maze. It is found by stepping out of the maze entirely. The modern application of this wisdom is to recognize when you are walking in the labyrinth. A seemingly small trigger, a partner's indifferent tone, a boss's abrupt feedback might send you spiraling into a familiar pattern of anxiety or defensiveness. That is the moment to pause. That is the moment when the ghost of a past hurt has just appeared in a corridor. The old controlling reflex is to try to manage the situation, to manipulate the other person's emotions, or to double down on your own defenses. The new, liberating choice is to acknowledge the feeling for what it is, a flashback, an echo. This is where the tools of mindfulness and self-compassion become the thread of Ariadne. Instead of trying to control the external world, you turn inward and, with profound gentleness, ask yourself, what part of me is feeling hurt right now? What memory is this triggering? You can send a wave of compassion to that unhealed part of you, a simple, non-judgmental acceptance of the pain. By doing so, you are not trying to change the past or control the present. You are simply witnessing the hurt, giving it the attention it was denied long ago. And in that act of gentle acknowledgement, the walls of the labyrinth begin to dissolve. You realize you are no longer a prisoner of the maze. You are simply the one who can now choose to walk in the open, unburdened by the need to control. The archer's detachment from the target. There is a Zen story of a master archer who was asked the secret of his flawless aim. His students watched him as he walked to the shooting line. He did not narrow his eyes in concentration or tense his muscles with a fierce determination to hit the bullseye. Instead, he stood with a profound stillness, his breath even and calm. He lifted the bow, drew the arrow, and released it in a single fluid motion. The arrow flew straight and true, piercing the center of the target. When a student asked, "Master, how do you find the focus to hit the target so perfectly?" The master smiled and said, "I do not focus on the target at all. I focus on the stillness within me. My only job is to be present with the bow, the arrow, and the feel of my own breath. The target is merely a place for the arrow to land." This simple story reveals a profound truth about letting go. True mastery is not found in controlling the outcome, but in perfecting the process. The mind, in its desire for control, is always fixated on the bullseye. It says, "I must hit the target. What if I miss? What will people think?" This fixation on the result creates tension, anxiety, and a shaky hand, paradoxically making it harder to succeed. The Zen master, on the other hand, understands that the target is a future event, and the future is beyond his control. The only thing he can control is the present moment, the steadiness of his stance, the smoothness of his draw, the quality of his breath. The modern application of this is incredibly powerful. We live in a society obsessed with results. We are measured by our successes, our accolades, our financial portfolios. We become fixated on hitting the target, getting the promotion, achieving the perfect body, finding the perfect partner. This constant focus on the outcome creates an undercurrent of anxiety that saps our joy and diminishes our performance. You may find yourself obsessing over a presentation you have to give, replaying the potential failures in your mind. The ego is focused on the bullseye. Will they like me? Will I sound smart? What if I forget my words? The archer's wisdom would guide you to a different path. The target is the successful presentation. The process is the calm breathing you can do before you start, the clarity of your voice, the confidence in your posture. Your job is not to control the audience's reaction, but to be fully present with the action of giving the presentation itself. By letting go of your attachment to the outcome, you free up all the energy you were spending on worry, and you can pour it directly into the process. And paradoxically, when you are fully present with the process, the likelihood of a successful outcome increases dramatically. You are no longer trying to control the future. You are simply mastering the now. And that is where all true power resides, the whisper of the ancestors. Deep within the collective unconscious of every person lies an ancient river of memory. It is a river fed by the experiences of your ancestors, their triumphs and their suffering, their resilience and their fears. Sometimes you feel a current pulling you in a direction you don't understand, a subtle whisper that seems to guide your thoughts and actions. This is the archetypal narrative, the inherited patterns and belief systems that you carry. You might find yourself grappling with an unexplainable feeling of unworthiness or a relentless need to prove yourself, only to discover that these are not entirely your own. They are the echoes of a past where your ancestors may have had to fight for their survival, where self-worth was directly tied to their ability to produce and endure. The need to control is often an act of unconscious loyalty to this ancestral river. We feel a pressure to succeed, to hold things together, and to never show weakness, because this is the unspoken rule passed down through generations. Our minds, driven by a deep-seated desire to honor the struggles of those who came before us, try to continue their fight for control, even when the world no longer demands it. But this inherited burden, this ancestral ghost, is a heavy one to carry. You are living a life that is no longer their life. You are fighting battles that are no longer your battles. The modern application of this is to recognize that your need for control might be an inherited pattern. Think about your family's history, the values that were prized, the fears that were unspoken. Did they come from a place of scarcity? Did they endure hardship that required an iron grip on survival? And now, ask yourself, is that my story? Or is it simply a story I was told? The whisper of the ancestors is not meant to be a chain. It is meant to be a song. The courageous act is to listen to the song, to understand its melody of resilience and strength, but to release the heavy burdens of fear and control that came with it. Letting go, in this profound sense, is an act of liberation not just for yourself, but for your entire lineage. It is the conscious choice to say, I see the pain you carried, and I honor it. I honor the strength it took for you to survive. But I will not carry the burden of your fear. I am free to live a different life, one guided by trust and peace, not by the need for perpetual control. By releasing this grip, you become the one who breaks the chain, allowing the river of your own life to flow in a new direction, unburdened and free. The unclenching of the fist. Consider the image of a clenched fist. It is a powerful symbol of our need for control. When we are afraid, angry, or anxious, our bodies often mirror our internal state. Our muscles tense, our jaw tightens, and our hand curls into a fist, a primal gesture of defense. We hold on to our worries, our expectations, and our desire for a specific outcome as if they are a tangible object in our palm. We believe that by holding on so tightly, we are protecting ourselves, that we are exerting our will over a chaotic world. But this grip is a cage. When the fist is clenched, nothing can enter and nothing can escape. The energy required to maintain this tension is immense, leading to exhaustion, stress, and a constant, low-level anxiety. We live our lives in this state of perpetual readiness, prepared to fight a battle that may never come, all while our palm aches from the strain. The clenched fist represents the ego's iron grip on the illusion of control. It is a refusal to trust in the natural unfolding of life, a desperate attempt to force reality into a shape we can manage. The modern application of this is to bring conscious awareness to this physical and mental state. Notice the moments in your day when you feel this internal clenching. It could be when you're stuck in traffic, when a difficult email arrives, or when you are waiting for a response from someone. In those moments, you can practice the conscious act of unclenching. You can notice the tension in your jaw and soften it. You can feel the tightness in your shoulders and allow them to drop. And most importantly, you can consciously, deliberately, open the palm of your hand. This is not a passive surrender. It is an active release. It is a profound declaration to yourself. that you are letting go of the need to fight, to control, and to hold on. When you unclench your fist, you are no longer in a defensive posture. You are open and ready to receive whatever the present moment holds. The energy you were spending on tension and control is now free to be used for creativity, compassion, and presence. By releasing the physical and mental grip, you are making space for peace to enter. The power is not in the clenching, but in the profound relief and strength that comes from the letting go. The story of the two wolves. An old Cherokee elder was teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person, too." The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." This powerful and widely known parable is a profound teaching on the nature of our internal struggle. The need for control and the suffering that comes with it are the result of us feeding the first wolf, the one representing the ego's fear and the mind's endless drama. Every time you ruminate on a past mistake, you are feeding the wolf of regret. Every time you lash out in frustration, you are feeding the wolf of anger. Every time you compare yourself to others, you are feeding the wolves of envy and inferiority. The more you feed this wolf, the bigger and stronger it gets, and the more it dominates the internal landscape of your mind. The art of letting go is the conscious and deliberate choice to stop feeding the first wolf. It is not about killing the wolf or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about recognizing its presence and then consciously withholding your energy and attention. You can notice the thought of anger without dwelling on it. You can acknowledge the feeling of envy without acting on it. And by doing so, you are choosing to feed the other wolf, the one of peace, compassion, and kindness. This choice is made in the smallest moments of your day. It is the decision to take a deep breath instead of sending a reactive text. It is the choice to forgive yourself for a mistake instead of sinking into guilt. The modern application of this is to become a mindful observer of your own internal diet. What are you feeding? When you find yourself in a state of anxiety or stress, you are not a helpless victim of circumstance. You are the one holding the bowl. You have the power to decide which wolf gets fed. By consciously shifting your focus from the relentless drama of the controlling mind to the simple, peaceful qualities of presence and acceptance, you are not just making a choice in a single moment. You are fundamentally reshaping your internal world. You are starving the wolf of suffering and nourishing the wolf of peace. And in doing so, you are finding a freedom that is not dependent on the external world, but on the choices you make within. The great stillness of the lake. Imagine yourself standing on the shore of a vast, tranquil lake. The surface is so calm and still that it perfectly mirrors the sky, the mountains, and the clouds above. This lake is a metaphor for your truest self, a deep, unmoving expanse of pure awareness. The constant stream of thoughts and emotions that pass through your mind are like the ripples waves, and reflections on the surface. When a gust of wind comes, the surface of the lake is disturbed, becoming a chaotic frenzy of motion. But no matter how turbulent the surface becomes, the great stillness in the depths of the lake is never affected. It remains unchanged, a quiet and profound peace beneath the chaos. Our minds, in their relentless need for control, are often so fixated on the surface of the lake. We become completely identified with the ripples of anxiety, the waves of anger, and the reflections of external events. We believe that we are the turbulence. We spend all our energy trying to smooth out the surface, to control the waves, to force the reflections to be what we want them to be. But this is an exhausting and futile battle. The true source of peace is not in the surface. It is in the depths. It is in the realization that you are not the wave. You are the lake itself. The modern application of this is to shift your point of reference. When you find yourself caught in the turbulence of a difficult emotion, a surge of stress, a pang of fear, a wave of sadness, don't try to fight it or control it. Instead, close your eyes and remember the lake. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself sinking below the surface, past the ripples and the noise. Feel the immense, unwavering stillness that exists just beneath the chaos. You can say to yourself, this thought, this feeling, is just a wave on the surface. I am the stillness in the depths. This isn't about ignoring your emotions. It's about holding them in a much larger, more stable container. By letting go of your identification with the surface waves, you find an unshakable inner peace that is not dependent on the external conditions of your life. The waves will still come and go, but you will no longer be lost in them. You will simply be the vast, quiet lake, and in that, you will find your home. For the art of forgiveness is letting go. There is a timeless teaching that forgiveness is not a gift you give to someone else. It is a gift you give to yourself. To forgive is not to condone a past wrong, nor is it to forget the pain it caused. It is the conscious and deliberate act of letting go of the hope for a different past. It is the realization that the past is unchangeable, and that the energy you spend holding on to resentment, anger, and the need for retribution is a heavy chain that you have fastened to yourself. You are the one who is holding the anchor. The mind, in its desire for control, often believes that by holding a grudge, it is maintaining power. It feels that if it lets go of the resentment, it is somehow losing the battle or allowing the perpetrator to win. But this is a profound illusion. The person who hurt you has likely moved on, while you are still trapped in the past, replaying the event and reliving the pain. The grudge becomes a form of control, a refusal to accept the reality of what happened. It is the ego's desperate attempt to say, this isn't how the story was supposed to go, and I won't let it end until I get justice. But justice sought through perpetual resentment is a prison without a key. The modern application of this is to recognize the power of radical self-forgiveness. Just as we hold grudges against others, we often hold them against ourselves. We replay past mistakes, berate ourselves for perceived failures, and cling to the shame of our past. We refuse to forgive ourselves, believing that this self-punishment is somehow a form of control that will prevent us from making the same mistake again. But this only creates a vicious cycle of self-loathing and anxiety. The act of self-forgiveness is the ultimate form of letting go. It is the compassionate understanding that you were doing the best you could with the awareness you had at the time. It is the conscious decision to release the heavy burden of guilt and shame, to untether yourself from the person you once were so that you can become the person you are meant to be. Forgiveness is the act of dropping the anchor and allowing yourself to finally drift into the peaceful waters of the present, the echo of the empty room. As this journey begins to come to a close, imagine your mind is not a theatre filled with a frantic drama, but a vast and quiet room. A room that has been cluttered for so long with the furniture of control, the chairs of anxiety, the tables of expectation, the lamps of self-judgment. As you have been letting go, piece by piece, you have been clearing this room. Now, in the stillness, you can hear the profound echo of the empty space. It is the sound of peace. It is not an absence of sound, but an invitation to hear something new. The mind is no longer frantically trying to fill the silence. It is simply resting in it. You have realized that the peace you were searching for was never a prize to be won by controlling the world. It was the natural state that was always there, waiting beneath the noise. It is the profound sense of spaciousness that arises when you are no longer trying to force a different reality. The need for external validation, the fear of the unknown, the clinging to past hurts, these were all just frantic attempts to decorate a room that was always perfect in its emptiness. Now, you can feel a lightness, a sense of unburdened freedom that comes from knowing you are no longer the one who has to hold everything together. This empty room is not a place of loneliness. It is a place of infinite possibility. It is where true creativity can arise, where compassion can flow effortlessly, and where profound stillness can take root. It is the realization that to be truly full, you must first be empty. To be truly strong, you must first let go of the need to be in control. In this final moment, simply rest in the spaciousness you have created. Feel the quiet power of not needing to be anyone or anywhere else. You have arrived not at a destination, but at the present moment, which has always been your true home. The return to the breath. The journey is not about arriving at a permanent destination of peace, but about cultivating a pathway back to it whenever you are lost. This pathway is a single, simple, and profound anchor that is always with you, your breath. After all the stories, the metaphors, the ancient wisdom, and the psychological insights, all that remains is the simple, rhythmic act of breathing in and breathing out. The breath is the bridge between your mind and your body, between the external world and your inner stillness. Now, as this experience comes to a close, gently bring your awareness back to the sensation of your breath. Feel the cool air as it enters your nostrils and the warm air as it leaves. There is no need to change it, no need to control it. Simply be with it. It is the one thing in this universe that you do not need to control. It happens on its own, a constant, gentle ebb and flow. Allow it to be your final teacher. With each inhale, you can feel yourself gently receiving the present moment. With each exhale, you can feel yourself letting go of all that is not serving you. Let go of the thoughts of the past. Let go of the anxieties of the future. Let go of the need for control. Let go of the stories you have been telling yourself, and simply be here, now, in this moment. The peace you seek is not in the future. It is in this very breath. You are not the storm. You are the stillness.